Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. Let's talk Kickstarter. Should you be backing? Is Stellaris Infinite Legacy right for you? It's an interesting topic. It's raised a lot of conversation. There's pros, there's cons. Let's talk about it. What do you need to know? What all is it about? And what things do you need to consider when we're talking about it? Let's go. So this is Stellaris Infinite Legacy. The whole premise being based on the video game of the same name, Stellaris. And the concept is, it is a 4X, explore, expand, exterminate, and the other fourth one they use here, exopolitics, or exploit as well, depending on how you want to define it, as a ruler of your own civilization going up against other civilizations in a 2-hour legacy, repeatable, in the name, infinite replayability in terms of an ongoing campaign over many gameplay sessions. Now, you can see here clearly it is a success. Whatever you want to say about it from a perspective of your choice, money raised is clearly doing well. $2.3 million with 4 days left is nothing to sneeze at. Now, the question is, how does that actually look? Now, let's scoot over here to KickTrack. And I like KickTrack for this sort of discussion. You can see, first day, well over $1 million. Day 2, already over $1.5 million. Day 3 at $2 million. Since then, over the last 10 days, they've gotten about 300,000. And that's not a whole lot, all things considered. Now, some of it, you can go back here and point to the fact that it was this. It was the early bird. And the early bird accounts for just over 1.7 of the $2.3 million. That is the blessing curse of the early bird. That is the first point I want to make, is that many of these people, and I'd be interested to see the data on this, went in at the very beginning and have done what I have often done in these pledges, as keep it because you know you're better off because of the price difference. As you can see here, the difference being between these two pledges, you get the extra miniature, which, all things considered, that's not really a big difference, right? So why are so few extra people, 2,000 people over 10 days, only backing if it's just a miniature? You're not even getting it for a different price, right? That's the crux of the issue when it comes to early bird pledges. And most of the time it's a price difference. And so then you see people begrudge those who got in before them. That's not really the case here, because superfluous miniature, is that really what you're going to hold a grudge over? Most likely no. Which leads us to then, okay, what is the issue? Because if you look at this, this looks fantastic. The art looks great. A 2-hour 4X space game, right? Heavy gamers, 4X gamers, wet dream. 2 to 4 players, only with a 2-hour time frame. You know, you see the comparisons out there. Man, if you can play this in 2 hours and you can add in people and take people out with, you know, variable win conditions and just so much adaptability, that all sounds amazing. But the stalling issue in this case is that the homework, the advanced preparation that a lot of people were expecting to see on day 1, on day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, just hasn't fully been there. And that's led to people dropping pledges. That's led to people just sort of feeling mixed about it. Hence, it's only raised $300,000, less than 10% of its funding in the majority of its campaign. Now, the other thing you need to know about this KickTrack is look at this here for a second. You can see more of the exact amounts, and especially these big Kickstarter projects that do 7 digits, rare is the exception that has very little. Like, small amounts, sure, but losses, not only in dollar amounts, but in total number of backers. There aren't too many others that do that. And let's be honest, a lot of these campaigns have slowdowns, but that's a significant slowdown. Now, the other point that you have to be aware of. The standard pledge is $110. We've talked about Primal being a significantly high barrier to entry. That's a massive barrier to entry. Now, that's not too much. 110, you know, we've all seen plenty of games go for that or more, or around there. That's not in and of itself. But if you look carefully, it doesn't include stretch goals. So for $60 more, you're getting a 5th to 6th player expansion, which really you probably aren't looking at from the expansion being able to play that many people, but those added factions that are going to be added for more variability, as well as the Frontier expansion, which includes all the stretch goals. That is the difference. That is the thing to be aware of. And the question with these a lot of the time is, why would I ever do the standard edition then? Because hopefully it's going to be cheaper at retail, especially plus or minus shipping. That tends to be the way of our industry. Now, I'm not going to generalize and say everybody goes that way, but a significant portion do, and until proven otherwise, I have to lean that way in this case. That's also why you only see 190 people doing that. And maybe that's because their country may not be able to get it otherwise, which is a whole nother side point. Now, why else has it stalled? Because this looks like, Chris, everything you're saying is great, right? Everything. Accessible, immersive storytelling. The organization is so easy. Memorable, epic gameplay. Oh, there. You hit on it right there. Right? How is the gameplay? The problem is, there were no videos of gameplay on the first day. They have only even put out sparse videos since then. Add-ons, playmat, sure. The exclusive, another exclusive, and this is all what you're getting with a deluxe. And there's plenty of stuff. I mean, stuff is not the question here. This is also the expansion. And I'd say with all of this variability and all of this being thrown in, it's ridiculous. I mean, again, which one you're going to go for. Some stretch goals here. I'm not going to go over those. The metagame stretch goals, again, adding little things in there, adding some packs, adding some miniatures, adding some cards that are all just very good. All being mentioned up there in the previously mentioned stretch goals. And again, just tons of stretch goals. So you would think, again, as a game that is having all these stretch goals, why are we not unlocking? Why are not people not getting excited by all of the things we're getting? Because that's what we like to see. We get more stuff, and the bandwagon gets stronger and stronger, and it goes up and up and higher and higher, and stalls. And that's been the issue here, because we haven't really seen this portion of things. We have seen overviews. We have seen glimpses. We have not seen full gameplay. We have seen short segments. We have not seen a rulebook. Now, on the day this is going to be posted is when they're supposed to have the rulebook up. So, hopefully, that is a full rulebook. But you won't be able to tell playtime by reading the rulebook necessarily. But it'll give you a glimpse and an overview of sometimes how are all of these pieces going together. Because that's what we have not seen, is how all these pieces go together. You can show me this round, you can show me this phase, you can show me this action. But I need to see the global picture of all of them together, right? And then that has been my biggest issue. So that brings us to, should you back this or not, right? Well, let's compare it to what else is out there, right? Let's do that first. Because that might give you the pros and the cons and the pluses and the minuses that you really what you need. And therein lies the problem, is the comparisons out there to Eclipse, the 2nd edition, as well as Twilight Imperium, most commonly probably the 4th edition at this point, being the latest iteration, is that no one really knows outside of in-house what this truly looks like. So I would dare say, as a pro, it may have, based on the promises on this page, the highest ceiling of any of those 3 games. And that, in fact, cannot be downplayed. That is a very high ceiling, folks. Because those 2 games are extremely well thought of. However, because you also don't know, this also probably has the lowest basement of all 3. And then you have to ask yourself, am I willing to risk $170 on that? $170 that could be tied up elsewhere. Or if it does not work out to that, that is not going to hold its value. You already know the value of those other 2 already, in terms of the gameplay, but also just the cha-ching, right? This game does not have a solo mode. It is going to be supposedly having one in the future, but you need to be aware of that as well. The other question also that needs to be brought up is this game trying to stay true to the original IP? Is it trying to basically just make the exact copy, a video game version of Stellaris in the tabletop? Which could lead to then some issues in terms of the nuance of the gameplay, or just feeling like it's too much math and too much upkeep. We've seen that with other digital versions that have taken a lot of that away, that have really improved the game and the flow of things. People really like Root in that example to help learn it. Or people really liked the other one that's on Kickstarter right now, Sentinels of the Multiverse, done as a digital version, because it took a lot of the way of the things that people didn't like about the tabletop version. And now you're sort of doing it in reverse. And is that going to work, or is it going to cause issues that weren't there on the PC side of things that now people are going to become frustrated with? That's a risk. Again, because we have not seen how all of this connects. And to that point, would you be better off spending the $15 or so to see whether or not you even like the video game version of it? And if that is too detailed in some of the upgrades and some of the nuances and some of the minor tweaks, are you going to like it on this? Because now you have to manage all of that on your table instead. Now, unlike the other two games that I'm comparing it to, Stellaris is not trying to become a King of the Hill a la Twilight Imperium, nor is it trying to explore everything and sacrifice a little bit of depth that Twilight Imperium has to make it more streamlined, which is more of what Eclipse has done, with a little bit of more of a Euro strength mechanism. It is taking these civilizations that are at the very crux, beginning of their journey, and exploring with them as they develop. It is taking that 4X framework that is used in the other two games and using it to tell a story of the civilizations themselves. There is combat, but it is more a side effect of the exploration, the diplomacy potentially gone wrong, rather than a main feature, it appears, at least, of the other two said games. Also, how you treat combat in each of these games is distinctly different. Eclipse, for example, you are doing a lot of it pre-battle. Stellaris ultimately is going to handle it differently. Conflict is not the main driving factor. It is, in fact, probably, I would dare say, maybe the least in all three of these. It is also possibly the most adaptable, if what they say is true. It is the most easy to get to the table, if what they say is true. Is it going to be easy to get to the table, though? Is it actually going to be a 2-hour playtest? We all know that that's not usually the case, especially on the first couple games. How big is the learning curve going to be on this? You know what the learning curve is like on the other two. And so if the learning curve is just as big on this as the other two, well, that kind of negates some of those positives, doesn't it? And for this price point, you can easily get the other two as well. Again, for more proven commodities. But like I said, if you want a game that can potentially be more multiplayer solitaire with a sprinkling of war thrown in or conflict as part of it, but not necessarily a core feature of it, this may be more to your liking. Twilight Imperium, that is a core element of things, whether you like it or not. Eclipse, it is as well, in a lesser degree, and done in more of a Euro-style manner, but it's still there. You can argue how heavily. What does that make you feel like? Does that make you feel comfortable knowing all of this stuff? This is a lot of money to put down on an unknown. And I've had several people say, no rulebook, no gameplay, no bye-bye. Right? And so that would be my biggest concern here. And even with a rulebook, it again doesn't show you how those pieces connect sometimes. On a side note, look at these cards, for example. Look at all of the stuff. And that's hard to see, and I wish I had a little bit closer picture. But look at these cards for a second. Look how much text, look how much symbology, look how much is going on in those cards. And then let's take a look at Eclipse. Right? Drastically different. Now, you still have to learn some symbology, but there is a lot less going on here than there is in these cards. Again, another feature of talking about that overhead. How much overhead is there going to be? How much AP is there going to be? Even though in theory you can play it in 2 hours. As a last point, is it weird to anyone else that here is the Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy page, and here is the image that they use here. And here is the Stellaris Infinite Legacy. Like moon, sun, bunch of ships going that way. Moon, moon, planet, ships going that way. Anyway, it looks very similar. Just notice that. Also, $1 late pledging. If you don't pledge now at a pledge level, they have said that is going to be higher in the pledge manager later, whether that's a late pledge or a $1 pledge. So you have to also ask yourself, is it worth it from that side of things? And honestly, if you're on the fence at all right now, I would late pledge. Now, the problem with that also is in the FAQ here, they specifically mentioned that, yeah, maybe we're going to have some third-party people be able to play it, but we can't also promise that that's going to be before the pledge manager closes. So in case you're on the fence even then, you may not still have your answer. So is that a risk you're willing to take? Me personally, no. I was interested, but there's too much of a learning curve. There's too much overhead to make me be able to get to this table and to make my game group enjoy this. This is not the type of game from a heavy standpoint that they enjoy. So for me, it's an easy pass. But I know there's a lot of people that are really clamoring for something of this ilk. Hopeium is a real drug, especially on Kickstarter. $2.3 million says the exact same thing. And hopefully, they're right. And it turns out to be everything they want it to be. So those are my thoughts. Are you going to be one of those 12,975 people? Are you going to join them? Or not? How strong do you feel one way or the other about this? We'll see. Time will tell. I hope, for almost 13,000 people's sake, that it turns out to be just as good as they hope. There you go. Those are my thoughts. Have a great rest of the week. I'll see you around, hopefully. Stay classy.